Hi everyone, it's Tony from Dive Tech in Grand Cayman. Today on the Photo Channel, I'm going to talk about a very important topic, and that is the care and feeding of your underwater camera system. I've been in underwater photography professionally for about 12 years now, and for 3 of those years, I worked as the service manager for Reef Photo and Video, and I learned many valuable lessons from the unfortunate mistakes of others. My job as service manager consisted of receiving incoming packages, and with the help of my service technicians, evaluating what needed to be done, how long it would take, and how much it would cost. Very quickly learned that there was a huge difference in the condition of the housings that would be sent to us. We would receive some housings with hundreds of dives on them and they looked brand new. Others, after just a few dives and a few months of use, looked like they were some sort of ancient artifact found under the sea. So what's the difference between a housing that is well cared for and one that isn't? Well, aside from being bashed around and how careful you are with it, the single biggest factor is how well you rinse it after saltwater diving. Saltwater is your enemy. Saltwater causes corrosion on metal parts, and corrosion is bad. Ask anyone who's ever owned a boat. Corrosion is the difference between the technician taking 2 hours to disassemble your housing or 8 hours. Service departments bill out their labor anywhere between $50 and $100 per hour. So if it takes 8 hours for them to rebuild it, you're up to $800 before they even factor in any repair parts. Let's take a look at some illustrations to help us demonstrate this. Here we have a digital rendering of a camera housing, and we will zoom in on a push-button assembly. Now I've changed the colors on this to make it a little bit easier to see. We'll do a cutaway view, and here you can see the housing wall and the entire push-button assembly. This area behind the button, shown in blue, is a void that fills up with salt water when you're diving. Salt water remains trapped there, and it can corrode the shaft of the push button. In this view, I've cut away the spring and washer, and I've added some simulated rust on the button shaft. Note the O-ring in green. This is what seals the button shaft, keeping the ocean away from your camera. If corrosion, represented here in brown, were to form on the shaft, when this button were to press, this spot of corrosion would go below the O-ring and it would cause a leak. So what do? What's the best procedure? Well, let's take a look. Okay, we just got back from the dive boat, and the very first thing I'm going to do is take the camera out of the housing, and there's 2 reasons for this. One, I want to start downloading my images so I can look at them right away, but the second most important thing is I don't want to leave the camera body in here while I'm soaking the camera housing. So let's do that. Now that I have the camera out and in a safe, dry place, what I'm going to do is take the whole thing apart and I'm going to start rinsing and soaking my parts. Okay, for my arms and my fiber optic sync cables, really just a cursory rinse is all that's required. For my clamps, however, I do let these soak for a little bit more because these are made from anodized aluminum and stainless steel. Dissimilar metals in salt water will cause galvanic corrosion, so even though these are of good quality, it's a good idea to really soak these and kind of leach any of salt that is trapped inside and get that out. Okay, last but not least is the camera housing. I've got my housing in here. It is soaking completely in fresh water. Because it doesn't have a camera in it, it's a little bit floaty, but that's okay. I can hold it under the surface of the water. And while I'm holding it down, what I'm going to do is each and every control, I'm going to operate them 10 times. If it's a knob, I'm going to push it back and forth 10 times. If it's a button, I'm going to push the button in and out 10 times. Same thing for your 4-way control. You want to rock it back and forth and up and down and then hit the center button 10 times on everything. And that's going to help flush fresh water into those control recesses and salt water out. Now I'm going to let the camera just sit and soak in the fresh water for a few hours. Okay, it's been 2 hours. I've taken the camera housing out and I've placed it on here where it's going to dry on the towel. This may seem like a tremendous amount of work, but in reality, the whole procedure only takes about 5 minutes and it will drastically prolong the lifespan of your housing, so I highly recommend it. So this brings us to our next question. How often do we need to have our housing serviced or overhauled? And this is a really tricky question to answer. While some manufacturers will offer specific periods of time for housing service, the answer is really when it needs it. Of course, this relates to how well you've rinsed and cared for it. The better you've rinsed each control, the less often it will need to be serviced or overhauled. When you do need to have an overhaul, the less expensive it's generally going to be. So let's sum up. Remember that the better you rinse your housing, the less likely it will be to leak, the less often you'll need to have it overhauled, and the less the overhaul will be when you do have it done. Lastly, don't ever leave your camera soaking in a rinse bucket on a dive boat. If you're interested, I have a more comprehensive article on this topic, and I've added a link to that in the description below. Give it a look if you'd like some more information. If you've enjoyed today's video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. That helps us grow and it helps us bring you more content. Thanks for watching, guys, and we hope to see you next time.